Let's dive into a story from way back that honestly feels like it could be a modern political thriller. We're talking civil war, a secret pact made by a brilliant general, a shocking assassination, and the kind of masterful leadership that can take a crisis that should shatter a nation and instead use it to build a kingdom.
So, this is the big question, right? It's what our main character, David, is up against. See, he's right on the edge of winning everything, but his real fight isn't on the battlefield anymore. No, it's in that messy, complicated world of personal loyalty, old grudges, and the absolutely brutal game of power.
Okay, so let's set the scene. After King Saul dies, the whole nation just splits right down the middle. You've got this bitter, long-running conflict between two powerful houses, and both of them are fighting for control of Israel.
So on one side, you've got the house of Saul, which is now led by his son, Ish-Bosheth. And let's be honest, they're fading. Fast. They're losing support, losing strength, they're on their way out. But on the other side, that's the house of David. And his power, his influence, his army, everything is just growing stronger and stronger. All the momentum is with him.
But then, the whole game gets flipped on its head. And it's not some final, bloody battle that does it. No, it's a secret negotiation kicked off by the most powerful guy on the losing side.
So let's talk about Abner. This guy was Saul's #1 commander, the military muscle behind the whole operation. But Abner is no fool. He can see the war is lost. And maybe more importantly, he's pretty convinced that it's actually God's plan for David to be king over all of Israel anyway. So he decides it's time to make a deal.
And Abner's plan is frankly brilliant. It's a 4-step master plan. First, you go straight to David to make a pact. Now, David agrees, but with one condition. He wants his first wife, Michal, who also happens to be Saul's daughter, back. This is a super smart political move to strengthen his claim to the throne. Abner's like, done. Then he goes and convinces the elders, and finally, he promises to bring the entire northern kingdom over to David's side. David accepts the deal. And it's worth noting, he does this while his own top general, Joab, is conveniently off on a raid somewhere.
So it feels like they are this close to a peaceful unification. The war is about to end without any more bloodshed. But just as the ink is drawing on the deal, a personal vendetta threatens to light a match and throw the whole nation right back into chaos.
Because, in a long, bloody war, people don't just forget. Deep grudges get formed. And David's own general, the incredibly fierce and loyal Joab, has a very, very personal score to settle with Abner, the guy who just made peace with his king.
So to really get what's happening, you have to rewind a bit. See, in an earlier battle, Abner had killed Joab's younger brother. So now Joab gets back from his raid, finds out about this peace pact, and he is furious. He claims Abner is just a spy. And acting completely on his own without David knowing a thing, he secretly calls Abner back to the city, pulls him aside like they're going to have a private chat, and just murders him. In cold blood. He gets revenge for his brother and creates an absolute nightmare of a political crisis for David.
David is now in a huge bind. This looks really, really bad for him. Abner's powerful northern tribes could easily think David set the whole thing up to grab power. He has to prove he's innocent, and he has to do it right now. Or this fragile peace is going to shatter, and the civil war will be back on, probably worse than ever before.
And David, he doesn't miss a beat. His very first move is a loud, public declaration that he is innocent. He shouts from the rooftops that he and his kingdom had absolutely nothing to do with this murder, putting all the blame right where it belongs, on Joab. He's grabbing control of the story before it can spin out of control.
But David knows that just saying it isn't enough. He's got to show them. He commands everyone, and that includes the vengeful Joab, to mourn. He tears his own clothes, which is a huge public sign of grief. He weeps loudly at Abner's grave, writes a song lamenting the death of his former enemy, and refuses to eat all day. This is not some quiet, private grief. This is a full-blown national spectacle.
And you know what? It absolutely worked. The people of Israel saw all this and they believed him. They felt his grief was real. So instead of seeing him as some treacherous king, they saw a righteous leader who mourned the death of even his enemies. It was this incredible mix of savvy politics and, real grief. He turned a total disaster into a moment that actually won their loyalty.
So he dodged that political bullet. But the tests just keep on coming. With Abner gone, Saul's son Ish-Bosheth is pretty much defenseless. And, well, two of his own commanders see a power vacuum and an opportunity. These two guys, Rechab and Baana, they sneak into their own king's house while he's taking his afternoon nap, murder him right there in his bed, cut off his head, and then travel all night long to bring this gruesome trophy to David. They are fully expecting a massive reward for getting rid of his last rival. They walk in, present the head, and say, "Here is the head of your enemy." But David's reaction is not what they were hoping for. Not at all. Instead of praise, he's horrified. Instead of a reward, they get a death sentence. He calls them wicked men for murdering a righteous man in his own home, in his own bed.
David orders their execution on the spot. He wants to send a message to the entire nation, and he wants that message to be loud and clear. My kingdom will not be built on a foundation of betrayal, assassination, and disloyalty, period. He is setting a whole new standard of justice, one that applies even when the crime seems to benefit him.
And that really brings us to the ultimate takeaway here. These two moments, David's public grief for an enemy and his swift justice for assassins, they weren't just reactions, they were statements of purpose. They became the very foundation of his united kingdom. I mean, the contrast couldn't be more stark. You look at leaders like Joab and those assassins, they acted out of personal revenge or for their own selfish gain, and the result was just chaos, murder, and more division. But when David acted based on a principle of public justice, thinking about the good of the whole community, the result was unity, trust, and a stable kingdom.
And that leaves us with one last thought, really. This whole ancient story pushes us to ask a question about leadership that is absolutely timeless. Is a leader defined by their ability to just take power and crush their enemies? Or are they defined by their commitment to a standard of justice, even when it's hard? David's story seems to suggest the answer is the latter. Something to think about. Thanks for joining me on this one.